Alright, finally we've reached texturing. Now it's actually not as complicated as you might think. So I've already drug out a blob here, and just follow along, and hopefully this will be a nice way to get your feet wet with texturing. Now I'm not going to cover every single combination of texturing, but enough so that you have a solid foundation to get you started. So again, I have a blob here, and what we're going to do first is we're going to need to create our material. So what we're going to do is right click on anywhere in this area, but I'm just going to go under this materials folder that's already here and choose create new material, and I'm going to want to call this something like blob inside fill. Just hit enter. So we've created our material, really easy. Now what we're going to want to do is choose the correct shader. So we'll go to this drop down menu here, and we're going to go to RageSpline, and there's many options. Right now we're just going to choose textured, and then we're going to want to select our texture. There's many ways to get a texture into here. You can drag and drop. I'm just going to select, and then from this list I'll select one. For example, I'll select grid text 3. Now any compatible image will show up here, so just click on that, click OK. So we've created our material, we've chosen the shader to use, and we've assigned a texture. So what do we do now? So let's just go back, click on our RageSpline. Now if we go to our texture area, which is right here, you'll see two different drop downs here, and it might be kind of confusing, but just pretend or think of these as material holders. So this would be our first material here. So we just go and choose fill, and you'll see this little gizmo has shown up, but nothing has really happened. So what you need to do is, we've chosen the fill, but we still need to do a few things. So you want to come down to this mesh renderer, and you want to change this mesh renderer, the element under here, from RageSpline material, which is the default, to the material blob inside fill that we just created. So blob inside fill, we just choose it, and we can close this, and you'll notice that our texture now shows up in our fill. And we can quickly look at this gizmo. So this gizmo basically allows you to move the texture around, and it also allows you to change the rotation of the texture. So this little square box that you see is just showing you what the actual texture size is. So if it's a square, it's going to show up here. So this little purple region, it might be kind of hard to see, but this purple box area is the actual size of the texture, and you can increase that size, of course, and decrease it by dragging this handle, and you can rotate the texture around. So another thing to remember with texturing is that you can also still use all the previous commands that you had prior. So you could go and change the color. It's basically like multiply in Photoshop, if you've ever done that before. But you could change the color, for example, to red, and notice that now you have this red on top of this. And in addition to that, you could go ahead and like do a gradient. So it's really awesome and amazing, like some of the effects that you can get from just bringing this texture in and then using some of these other fill, like gradient effects. So that's basically texturing the fill of our RageSpline. So let's go ahead and now texture the outline. So we can see this outline a little, or this texture a little easier. We're going to just increase this outline width. So let's just make this a little bigger. Now we're going to follow the same similar steps. We're just going to go to materials. We can right click, create new material. And this one I think I'll call blob outline. You can call it fill too. Doesn't really matter. You can call it whatever you like, but it would be good to have something related to what you're doing. So we have blob outline fill. Now what I'll want to do is I'm going to have to again choose the correct shader. So I'll go down to RageSpline, textured again. Now I want to choose a texture. I'll click select, and we'll just choose this triangle this time. We'll close it. So we've created our material, and we've chosen the texture shader, and then we have chosen the texture. So now what do? We click back on the object. Now this we're going to use the same initial material, and then I'll show you why you would want to use another material as well. But right now we'll just go back to texturing, and this time instead of fill I'm going to choose outline. Now when I've chosen outline, you'll notice that, okay, well, this texture went away and I don't really see anything happening in here. So just to make things a little easier, I'm going to turn this gradient off too. So actually make it solid, not none. And we'll change the color back to white. So that's the default kind of what we started with. So we've chosen outline, but notice that, okay, well, what's going on? There's no texture here. Well, remember how I said earlier about the color multiplying like in Photoshop. So, well, we have black there by default, so you're not going to see any texture here. So if you click in here and you change it to white, you'll notice, wow, okay, there is a texture here, but that's not the texture that I had before. That's what's going on. That's a texture that was inside of this fill. Well, the reason is because we have the wrong material defined under these materials under the mesh renderer. So what we need to do is go back down here, click here, and we need to choose the right material. So we call that blob outline fill. Notice now that we've chosen that, now we have the correct texture. Now in addition to this, if we go back up here, we can look at this texture scaling, and this texture scaling basically allows you to affect the scale of how this texture is and how it wraps around this or within this outlined area. So that's all that that is. And you could also use it, for example, if I change this outline to, not outline, this fill to, for example, landscape. I could move these pieces around here. You can see how that it curves and follows the landscape, and you can adjust your scaling here and how it would wrap. So that's basically, I'll go ahead and change that back to solid and move these points around. So that's basically texturing for the outline and for the fill. Now the problem is, how can I do both? When I try to do this, well, now it's moved to the inside. I want to be able to texture both my fill and my outline, and I want to do two different textures. So how would I go about doing that? Well, it's actually, we're almost pretty much done. What you would need to do is go and first we can go down to this mesh renderer, and under our materials, you're going to want to increase this size first. So go ahead and increase this to 2. Hit enter. So when I've done that, some crazy things happen. Don't worry about that. That's because of various settings that we have. So I'll just can make this none right now. It really doesn't matter. I just want you to pay attention down here. So our first element, we're going to make our blob inside fill. And our second, we're going to make, well, it's already our blob outline fill. So these elements are basically related to these materials. Right now they're none, so you don't really have those. So we can choose fill for the first one, and there's our texture back. And then for our second one, we want our outline. So when we choose outline, there we go. So now we have our triangles that we had defined in this material on our outline fill, which of course we can still adjust the scaling. And we also have our inner fill material here, which of course again you can change the gradient of. So, and again also remember you can change the color of your outline fill. So that's how you would be able to do this kind of multi-texturing in a sense. Now one little thing you do need to worry about here is that this is the easy, straightforward way to do this multiple texturing. But the one downside of this is it's actually 2 draw calls. Now to get around this, I'm not really going to discuss that, but you would have to use a different type of shader. There is a, I believe it's a multi-textured shader here under your shaders. You could see here, for example, there's under your RageSpline shaders, there is a multi-textured, and I believe this is the one that you would want to use. So that is a quick run through with texturing and texturing the fill, texturing the outline, and you can of course do different combinations here, but we're not really going to cover every single one. So, but you pretty much have a fill and outline in your first material, and you have a fill and outline in your second. So I hope you've enjoyed this series of tutorials. You've picked up a few tips. RageSpline's really incredible program. It's very simple and easy to use, and you can see, especially now that we've gone through all of these different videos, you can see how powerful and useful and flexible it is. So hope you enjoy using the program, and hopefully we'll see each other again real soon in the future.